back is still not, I'm still quite a long way from perfect, and I've got a whole load of residents who are still quite upset. I've only just come back to the formal response from Milton Keynes Council, as I asked them in full council, who asked for it, why, what did you look at to make that assessment? I've literally just had it through today, so I will circulate that to the, obviously, Castlethorpe residents were affected as well. But the summary of it is they're going to monitor it over 6 months and see if there needs to be any more changes, is what they're saying.
So who is this, Milton Keynes or
Milton Keynes Council, because it was them who asked for it, because I was originally told it was Arriva, then Arriva said it was Milton Keynes, then Milton Keynes said no, actually it was Milton Keynes asked for change because it's it's the only fully subsidised route that's in Milton Keynes. So they were looking at it as a cost saving, which I was originally told it wasn't as a cost saving, it was efficiencies. So anyway, there's been lots of toing and froing on this, and I know, again, having updated some of the residents because the new bus timetable came into play today or yesterday, there are still some people who are struggling to get to work and college and school.
I mean, to leave it 6 months is not acceptable. I mean, if you're trying to get to a job, but 6 months, you're going to have to say, well, I've got to change my job.
If they were to make, because they can make changes to timetabling, which is in effect the kind of compromise that I've got them to do, but to actually change the route back means going through the Transport Commission, which means sending a notification that takes at least 90 days for approval. So the whole thing is a really stupidly bureaucratic process.
I mean, frankly, if they're going to wait 6 months to review, even if they then decided, people haven't just given up, then it's another 90 days.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is.
But the only way, because when it initially happened, and I said, this is god awful. And based on what data, there was no minutes, many meetings taken at Milton Keynes Council, because I asked to see the minutes and how this was actually come up. And no, apparently the minutes just record, it's just looking at efficiencies on the 33 bus routes. So, and it opens up a whole can of worms about how inefficient the process is at Milton Keynes, as well as some other issues that I've covered as well. But then my initial thing was just change it back, go back, and then I found out about the Traffic Commission. There is no pathway, even if it's a safeguarding, because it is a safeguarding issue, especially for children, that you can turn around to the Traffic Commission and say, we got it wrong, scrap that, can we just go back to how it was? No, you have to go through the whole 90-day process again.
Who is the Traffic Commission?
It's a government body, it's like the
It's
planning
not
inspector.
it's nothing to do with.
No, it's national level. And there's no, because I was not prepared to believe everything I was hearing by this point. That is the thing, the Traffic Commission can't just reverse something because it's found to be wrong, it has to go through the full process. So where we are at the moment is as good as it's going to get unless we want to go through the 90-day revision process. I've got a meeting with Public Realm on Thursday. Because again, I'll share what's been shared with me, with yourselves, because there's a cost argument they're making, how many people would have to be on the bus to make it justifiable and so on. I don't think they're looking at the right data, because again, I've had too many reports of people not having fares collected, so, and including, for some reason, the council wouldn't take this as evidence. They said, we need evidence. They said, I've provided you a passenger who, bless her heart, has logged every ride she's taken last year and recorded not only whether the fare was collected or not, but what the bus driver said to her was the reason for the fare not being collected. And that's not good enough evidence for them to say that there is a problem. It is so infuriating. I'm so bloody furious about the whole thing.
I mean, is it worth, making a formal complaint?
Well, what I've asked for, and what I'll be saying to them on Thursday, is I want this formally looked at, because again, and I've been saying it just because I've got the response through today, and I've seen it. I still think it's a lot of bluster and nonsense, and basically the council, I hope we're not streaming, are we?
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, the problem is, I don't think councils can actually eventually go to the local government ombudsman. An individual can. So I would suggest if somebody, perhaps in Hanslope who's suffering on this, could be helped to submit a formal complaint, and someone who's cross enough about it to take it right through to the local government ombudsman and see if that will put a rocket under whoever the officer is. I mean, it is just appalling.
It has been very badly handled, and especially with all the meetings, all the calls, everything I had, and the reasons were changing constantly. Who'd asked why it'd been done. So if there's no audit trail, which there obviously wasn't, that's a bigger problem. So anyway, I'll send the formal response that I've had to my question that I asked the council, so you can have a look at it. It's a great idea about maybe going on and think I've got.
Well, you have to go through a stage 1 complaint, a stage 2 complaint, and then you can go on to the ombudsman. But I'm not particularly to get to the ombudsman, but if necessary, obviously, but hopefully it will put a rocket up Milton Keynes to do that. And all of this should be preceded by an FOI to have the full, all emails, correspondence, written notes, representations, leading to the, whatever it was, a public transport order, being this one being made. And that will just bring out the fact that they didn't keep any minutes or records of the meetings.
When I asked at the last full council, and I asked for a copy of the detailed analysis, and that hasn't been forthcoming because I very much doubt it exists. Again, I was very clear in my asks. So much so, it's a story of another time over a beer. Anyway, but I'm going to follow it up again when I meet the public realm on Thursday. And understand what they now would need to see in order to make a change, which I know lots of residents still want. Because as you said, waiting for 6 months with people maybe not being able to get to their jobs on time, on college on time, or kids having to be out in the dark morning and evening, just isn't acceptable. And the other thing that I can do is ask this to be looked at as a safeguarding issue. Because I fear that their cost saving initiative is probably just going to cost you more on home to school rides that they're going to have to provide for children who are at the age to be able to travel and make changes on the bus and be sitting outside waiting for an hour and a half for the bus to come home. So yeah, it's been a mess, but at least we got as many of the changes that we could, but now we'll have to go second string.
I mean, I know you and Chris and Liam sort of switch who comes here, but if you could I think, Russell, you're probably our main contact, aren't you? So
in fact, the only thing they've done is what we suggested, to reroute the bus through Wolverton, so at least it's closer to the schools in Wolverton and closer to Wolverton Station as well, so people can get there.
But again, if they would even reroute it, that's going to have to go through the traffic commission process, and that's another 90 days just from them submitting it. I don't know what work is that has to be done in Milton Keynes to be able to ask for that too, but again, I'll try and update it for me.
Okay, all right, thank you very much for doing that. Okay. Very good. Anything else? Yes, we are back up and running partway through that. So I'm not quite sure how I'm going to stitch the two together. It might be beyond my technical skills, but if necessary, I'll publish both
You put the bars and say you lost a stick.
So for residents that were watching, the Wi-Fi went down and we all lost our screens, but it does now seem to have recovered. Right, so thank you very much for that. No other matters you want to raise? No, that sounds like plenty, really. So let's move on then to the clubhouse. As we just managed to get into Castlethorpe News, we very fortunately received a national lottery grant in December, and we immediately placed orders for most of the remainder of the social area furnishings and kitchen equipment. And the furnishings are scheduled to arrive from 2 suppliers this week and next week. Curtains are being supplied by Universal Blinds at a very generous discount. We also ordered all the units for the servery area, aka the bar, and they were fitted actually pretty much over the holiday period. So the only remaining items are some shelving in the serving area and some kitchen items being discussed with the prospective tenant. The last big issue in this equipment is the provision of an extractor hood. This was not part of our initial specification, but would be needed for the wider menu that's now being proposed. And although Castlethorpe Community Space has got a budget provision for the hood, it may not be sufficient depending on the quotes received. And the holiday period is obviously just absolutely everything stopped, for 2 weeks. But I'm not convinced it's restarted yet everywhere. Hence there is a resolution tonight to provide an additional financial facility should it be necessary to get that hood. But we'll have to see how that is, and I'll talk a bit about that when we get to that item on the agenda. We've been negotiating the tenancy agreement with the prospective tenant, and we believe we are now very close to signing, at which point we would announce the tenant. However, the tenant has got an existing hospitality business and has not really been able to engage substantially with us since the middle of December, which is a little bit worrying. And we are trying to get this signed pretty much this week. Assuming we sign, then we would expect a soft opening, as they call it. That's in February, with a formal opening by our new MP penciled in for the 22nd of February. If there is an irresolvable problem with the prospective tenant, then we'll have to look for another tenant, which will, of course, cause a delay. It will be very disappointing. We're simplifying the membership process so that there'll just be one class of member, and the changes to our articles are now being lodged at Companies House. Any resident can become a member for free, and directors can admit non-residents as members, usually if they've got a strong connection to the village. So, for example, if they play in one of the sports teams. Members will own the company, will elect the directors, and will receive a discount on prices which will already have been benchmarked to ensure good value. So we'll have little membership cards. There'll be something like this that everyone will have. You show that you get a discount. Gordon Fleming has agreed to be the company secretary and also the membership secretary. And his company is sponsoring the membership cards. And once the new articles are accepted by Companies House and we've signed the tenant, Gordon will then start slowly rolling out the membership, probably starting with the people who made donations and contributed in other ways. And once that process is running smoothly, then open it up to everybody. So that's the report. Any questions from anyone?
Yeah, good. Very good. Hopefully.
I hope so.
Hopefully.
No. Now, boundaries consultation. Unfortunately, Chris was ill in December, so we couldn't really discuss with our ward councillors. I think I copied you in on the correspondence. So basically, and this is really for, I think, Alison's benefit, the changes to the or the proposed changes to the ward boundaries were announced just before a parishes forum, but just after our meeting. So we couldn't really discuss it. But anyway, we weren't very happy being lumped in with the urban areas of New Bradwell and Bradville. And they weren't very happy being lumped in with rural because
Yeah.
obviously the issues are very different. So we have arranged a meeting tomorrow, as it happens, with Democratic Services, which there'll be a representative from Havisham, Richard Pryor, from Hanslope, who I think is Andrew Geary, I'm not absolutely certain. Moi from Castlethorpe, and also Alan Francis from New Bradwell, because he was on the parish's forum call and expressed his concern. The real problem seems to be that if you look at the rural part of Milton Keynes, it doesn't quite have enough electorate for 2 wards. It's about 10,000 a ward. As a consequence, someone needs to be lumped in with a bit of urban, and it used to be a bit of Newport Pagnell, but I think there is a broad consensus from everybody that Newport Pagnell ought to be its own ward as a whole, rather than being broken into 2 bits. So that means you've got to take a bit of urban from somewhere else. Now there are 2 proposals, one of which I think Richard Pryor actually got from the Conservative group, which talks about trying to, I probably could call it up, but anyway, basically it would mean that we would remain an entirely rural ward, and New Bradwell would go in with Wolverton East, I think it is. So that's one thing. The other is, I think, less likely, but if you had an uneven electorate, you could ask the Boundaries Commission whether they would consider having an uneven number of councils, so that you would have a smaller rural ward with, say, 2 ward councillors, and New Bradwell would go into, for example, Wolverton, and they would have the extra councillor there. So there would be different ways in which that might be possible to consider how you do it. But of course, that's not neat. But of course, and the Boundaries Commission probably likes something neat. And I mean, really, it ought to be what the practicalities on the ground are and how you actually get proper representation of rural and urban issues. Anyway, the reason I'm going through this is because that's what I'm going to say on our behalf at tomorrow's meeting, unless anyone feels any differently. And we'll see what Pete Brown, Democratic Services, has got to say.
Yeah, the only thing I would ask, I'm sure this has been looked into before anyway, are there any advantages for being lumped in with an urban?
I can't think of any, because the problems that urban areas face are different to the ones that we
Yeah,
face.
but no, I'm thinking in terms of like getting potholes fixed and things like that. I mean, that's early theory, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
So,
New Bradwell being where it is, it's more in common with Wolverton and Green.
oh, I totally understand that. So, yeah.
No, I take your point. Is there any advantage? I'm not sure there are.
No, I've actually thought about it hard, and I can't see
I
any.
completely, no, I have as well.
Yeah.
I didn't know whether anyone else had, but no, fair enough.
Anyway, there we go. Right, on that basis, that's what I will say. Moving on, 4.5 public art project. There's no update. I believe actually that Jackie has received an S106 form from Sharon, and we'll see how that goes. Right, let's move on then. Planning applications. There are just 2 some 5.1 reduction of some trees that are overhanging the school. Anyone want to comment on that? The second is story site extension at 57 Throw Close, but first floor office after garage. That's the one right at the very end of the private road, parallel to the sports ground at Throw Close. Anyone want to comment on that?
Yeah, the story side extension and a garage roof it. Well, not really, you can't say they're locked, can they?
No. Okay, no objection Does anyone want to comment on any of the previous planning applications in section 6? So we'll just go through that.
6.1 is your Cosgrove industrial expansion. Has there been any progress at all?
I just cannot even imagine them having that role. When I go on, try and get on 508 in the morning and it's already backed up to the Costington's turn where we come out near the Navy.
Yeah, but
Anyway.
I mean, let's not go through that again.
It's horrific.
Yeah, I think we are agreed and we have supported it. Right, in that case, let's move on to section 7. I propose a public excluded part 2 so we can consider these quotes and which was seconded by Russell and in favour. Right, to consider making a grant of up to 5k to Castlethorpe Community Space. I've explained the reason why. I've put a little note in your packs. CCS, Castlethorpe Community Space, has got a provision of 2,500, which should be, but may not be. I'm asking for an S137, that's the so-called free resource, which we can, I think the total cap on that's about 8k for us. And it's, I don't think we spent any of it in this financial year, so that would be available. Now, I would note that we did approve spending just under 8k on the long lead time furnishings using the S106 money that was passed to us from the shop. And we have subsequently, because we've had to balance the expenditure with the various categories of things like National Lottery loan and so on. They say, we'll give you so much for kitchen furnishings and so much for this and so much for that. So we said we'd take over, we being CCS, would take over that 3,750. So that's come off the committed expenditure or approved expenditure by the parish council that was approved in November. Okay. So we're saying we might want that a little bit more back if we need it. It's not at all certain we will need it. And incidentally, we won't do that until we've got a tenant signed on the line anyway, because we're not sorting out an extractor hood and other changes to the kitchen spec if we haven't got a client that's signing up for it. Yeah, we have the financial capacity to make that because we haven't yet done anything down on that 50k loan, which we won't actually need at the moment until we have to pay the streetlights bill, but we'll come back to that. So I'm just asking for this as a provisional approval.
I can't vote because I'm a director.
Yeah, well, they're personal.
There's part problem.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Mm.
So if that money, that 5k, if it wasn't spent on that, what would it be spent on? What else could it go on?
Probably we wouldn't take the loan out to that much. Yeah. So we've approved a loan. We've approved 4k expenditure, which is now being taken over by CCS, and CCS is asking if it can have a facility of up to 5k back.
Just seems to be taking a lot more money. That's what it seems to be taking a lot more money than we initially thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I find that a little bit concerning because it seems to be a bit endless at the moment. But that's just my thoughts.
Well, no, hang on. It's not endless. It has pretty much ended. In fact, it more than ended. Money that was approved by the parish council has been returned to the parish council. The only thing that so far we are expecting the parish council to fund are bollard lighting across the sports ground, which the footpath actually isn't part of the leased area anyway. That's just a safety issue.
Anybody who walks across there, to be honest, that would benefit.
Yeah,
I don't think
indeed.
that's purely, I don't think that's purely that.
So that's the only thing.
Yes,
that's
well, you need that anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry, Phil, I just confused. I suppose it's just been a bit thick. on the one hand, we're saying this is a loan, the 5K. On the other hand, it's saying it's a grant.
No. It would be a grant to CCS.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
Funded by a loan from DWLB. We've got the 50.
Yeah. So it'll be part of the £50.
If necessary.
If you need to do it. Yeah, okay. Sorry, that's, yeah, I understand. Thank you. I'm fine with it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, okay, thank you. Actually, money, because probably need, can I propose it? Yeah, and it needs a second in that case. It's fine, thank you. Right, the third one, or 7.3 rather, is to investigate replacing the village hall notice boards, Russell.
Yeah, and we're having to repair the front window of the village hall, so at the same time, it would probably be a good idea to clean up the whole of the front facade of the building. And the two notice boards that are there are quite difficult to pin stuff to. And the other one is rarely used. So I think it would be much better to get rid of them and replace them with new ones that are more user-friendly.
Totally agree. Yeah. Would it be possible to get at the same time, as part of the tidy, a bevel of the clock?
I suppose we could consider that.
Right, well, I do need to have a deep and meaningful discussion with Mr. Chapman on this, because Cricket have asked for a clock up at the clubhouse, and indeed have made a contribution, financial contribution. What I would like to do is to take this clock, which hasn't got a bezel, and put it up there, because they're not going to have Christmas lights strung across that, and to get a new clock here with a bezel, so that the Christmas lights won't foul it. Well, sort of, but I do, as I say, need to talk to Lawrence about that. So if we could consider that, when this comes back with the notice boards, perhaps we could try and wrap all of this in, because it's the glass on the front. Yeah, he means it's not bezel.
Because when
the
lights go down, the cables catch the.
It's like a little edge.
That's it's just that.
Yeah.
It isn't quite that simple, because all these are radio control clocks and all that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah,
It could be taken out and replaced.
Oh, when it's moved.
Yes.
So we need to notice board.
Yes.
One's a public one,
Yeah.
and I think should remain a public one.
Tom Inwood and I done that one.
I'm sorry?
Tom Inwood and I made that one.
The one that
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, and it is a nice shape, but it is ever so hard to get a thumbtack into.
Even with a powered stapler, it's hard to get stuff in it.
We were told to make it out of wood.
Yeah, and you did.
And you did.
Yeah, good. I think it will still be there when the village hall falls down.
That's all right then.
I must say the other one, I personally think it just needs a key and a smart mount.
Well, I think they need to match, to be honest.
Well,
Oh, they've got.
we'll buy one to match someone. Go on, right. If you want to come back, I mean, is everyone happy for Russell to come back next meeting with a proposal for smartening up the front of the village hall? It has got a little time, and I think it would be nice if it's not too expensive to make it look a little bit smarter and easier to put notices on. Right, can we move on to the payment schedule then? I think it's pretty much as normal. We've got two things which are slightly different. The bollard lighting which we approved, which was a 585 for 2 bollards, which we still have to get time to test the location and so on. But anyway, that's one thing. And the other was dealing with the fallen tree in Castlethorpe. Are there any questions on this before I move to approve?
I think we should also thank Luke and Stacey for lending my call leave of the equipment to get that tree down because I've done it.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Okay, and in that case, can we record our thanks to Luke Stacey for the loan of equipment to Michael Lever in helping with that tree. It's a great pity that tree came down, and particularly annoying in that it was only a couple of weeks before we were due to have tree works on it to correct its uneven balance.
What annoyed me more than anything, is we had that people come out and look at the trees and that bloke from Newmarket, and he said there's nothing wrong with them. Can't never them on that day. Well, they were bloody well falling and fall over.
Okay, in that case, I'll propose that we sign off the approved payment schedule. Russell, the second on it. All in favour then. Great. Right, we now need to move on to the budget for the next year. And substantially, it is the same as we looked at last month. All the expenditures, there's just about 3 or 4 changes, and I'll go through the changes, but we went through all the expenditures quite carefully and we were happy with them. So the changes. First of all, there's a change in the recorded preset here, at 0 increase. It has gone up simply because the number of Band D properties has gone up. This is due to probably a household that was previously in receipt of benefits, no longer being in receipt of benefits, so it paid all or a high proportion of its council tax. And you can see in the notes there that it moved up from 463 Band D equivalents to 467.8, and that's just the difference. So that means that our precept at 0 increase is 36,951. There's a very minor change to the MKC landscaping grant. Jackie had made an estimate and they've actually now published the actual number, but it's only a few pounds different. We do not have a landscaping contract. I'm not going to read the number out at this, and I'd ask you not to read the number out either. We can see it in red there, mainly because we haven't awarded the contract yet. But this is the represents the what we believe is likely to be the lowest outcome that we would have. But we will discuss that in part 2 and subsequently. We had marked the gas use in the village hall as provisionally at £2,000. It is coming in at just over £200 a month in these months, these last 2 bills. So it probably will be about 2,000 in the full year. This previous year was 1467. So with the increase, that's what we think it's going to be, or Jackie estimates it will be. If you go down to row 61, you can see that would give us a surplus of about £2,200 that we could use for capital projects such as further bollards, for lighting, such as notice boards, such as whatever else we want to do to improve the village. And if I could remind you that we normally try to target somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 in that category. So before I make a proposal on the precept increase, are there any questions on the data that you've got before you?
Have we been paying the street lights then?
No, but we have got provision for that.
We have.
In our current, in our deposit account, and we would have to draw down a chunk of this PWB loan in order to pay for it as well.
Yeah.
But we're still waiting for that to come in, and it may be they've being shamed into not charging us, given they made such a mess of the project. Anything else? Right. If you see in the comments against the precept, each 1% increase is about 365. A 5% increase would give a total of £38,799. So 38.8 basically. Okay, as a total precept, and that would take our surplus for capital projects to just over 4,000, which is a little bit on the low side. But I think if we're trying to balance a fair increase with having enough to make improvements in the village, that is my recommendation to the council, that we go for them. I mean, what we do is make sure it comes out at 4.99, you know, on the form, but which is also a bit tricky completing it. But I think that would be a reasonable balance to ensure we could do some improvements. Most of the costs are, we really can't do anything about them. They are what they are. Any comments? I mean,
Is that in line with Milton Keynes?
Milton Keynes is going 5% in total. I mean, it's slightly different for them because they have the social care responsibility. Well, they just have different responsibilities to us, but they're 5%.
What does that compare to?
5%, I think.
So,
Yeah. Okay. Well, should we move to the vote? Then it's, I'll propose. I do need a second, but Russell and.
Yeah, it's a good time to vote, isn't it?
All right. Let's we'll come back just to confirm. I mean, it's clearly it's passed. It's just check with him. It's unanimous when he comes. Is there any correspondence? No. Is there any other business for noting or including on the future agenda? No. Right, so the next normal ordinary parish council meeting will be held at 7:30 on Monday, the 3rd February. So I apologise for the technical break in the middle of this, which I think was beyond our control. And thank you if you have persevered to the end of this. And we will see you on the 3rd of February. So I'll now stop the live stream.